In your book, you talk about the importance of narratives and stories, and how stories shape our worlds. And I'd love to hear you talk on how, especially Christians of color, need to be able to recognize the stories that are told about us and also how they shape us. Why is that important for Christians of color, especially, to know?
I think it's important to know that the Bible is a story.
Mm,
We often treat it like it's an academic book, or we treat it like it's like it's this lofty treaty that descended from heaven, right? But it's actually just a story. It's a story of God's redemption and His relationship with humanity, and how He's trying to reconcile all of that. And if people of color don't see themselves properly in that narrative, then we ultimately don't see God in the way that He truly is. We
mhm.
don't see humanity in the way that it truly is. And when people of color are omitted from the grand narrative of great contribution in the Christian faith, then ultimately they become uh, individuals who've placed themselves in the margin, not just been told you've been in the margin, but you also place yourself at the margins.
Mm,
And it's a beautiful thing to see God's truth transcend cultures, ethnicities, and nationalities. And we see that through the scriptures, and we see that played out throughout history. And what we have to do, and this is one of my grand challenges to not only people of color, but also folks who are majority culture within this country and who may guard some of the doors, if you will,
mm,
is that we have to begin to expand the story intentionally, put our place in particular stories and narratives, study, research people who have a different paradigm of the gospel.
mm.
And because that not only expands the theological understanding of who we are, but it helps expand the theological understanding of people who are different than you.
Yes.
And when you go to a seminary and you read and you study one type of person, when you go to churches and you hear pastors quote from one type of person, when your own personal library is filled with one type of people, then you have a very homogeneous worldview, even if that's not necessarily your primary culture, if you will.
Sure.
And there's great contributions from people of all colors, all nationalities, all backgrounds. And I think the greater we consume that content, the better not only students of the world we are, not only will we love people better and we understand people better, and it'll expand our understanding of God's great manifold wisdom, but it also makes us better people. It also makes us better Christians, and it makes God that much more glorious. Amen. So,
Amen.
um, yeah, I mean, I think, and it's not just culture. I think also a little bit in my I think it was the second chapter I try to deal with this, is that it's not just cultural, but I also think it's class and status as well that we have to expand. Like if we're only allowing the stories that come from the palace and not the
Mhm.
peasants, then our theology is just really lopsided and it becomes a social club.
Hmm.
And the gospel has never been meant for it to be a social club that was only here to expand our social mobility. It is here to give dignity to all people.